the Indiana Fever beat the Dallas Wings 102-83. This was a highly anticipated game because it was going to be the first time that Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers would be going up against one another in the WNBA.
It began long before the lights of the WNBA stage. Years before packed arenas, record-breaking ratings, and franchise-altering headlines. Two teenage girls were already rewriting the narrative of women's basketball. Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers, names that now dominate highlight reels and sports debates, first crossed paths in high school gyms packed with scouts, fans, and whispers of greatness. At the time, Clark was already earning a reputation as a relentless scorer with limitless range and fiery court presence. Meanwhile, Bueckers embodied composure, efficiency, and a basketball IQ that defied her age. Their styles couldn't have been more different. Clark, bold and aggressive, launching threes from near half-court. Bueckers, graceful and calculated, slicing through defenses with surgical mid-range shots and perfect passes. Despite the stylistic contrast, their early years were defined by shared experiences. They competed together on elite AAU teams, trained with Team USA, and forged a competitive friendship that added emotional complexity to their budding rivalry. Coaches who saw them up close knew this wasn't just another generation of talented players. It was the beginning of something bigger. Fans began to divide themselves early, debating who was the real future of the game. Even then, it was clear. These two were destined to collide again and again, pushing each other to new heights with every meeting. Their story wasn't just a rivalry. It was the spark of a movement that would forever change the trajectory of women's basketball. As their high school careers closed with national acclaim, Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers faced defining choices that would alter the course of their legacies. Bueckers chose the crown jewel of women's college basketball, UConn. Under the legendary guidance of Gino Auriemma, she stepped into a dynasty built on banners, tradition, and the weight of expectation. It was a move that seemed inevitable for a player hailed as the next great Husky. Meanwhile, Clark made a bold decision that turned heads. She committed to the University of Iowa, a respected but unproven contender on the national stage. To many, it looked like a gamble. To Clark, it was an opportunity to build something from scratch, to lead a program not steeped in glory, but hungry for it. From the very beginning, their college careers told two different stories. Bueckers excelled in the structure of UConn's system, leading with precision and poise. Clark, on the other hand, exploded onto the scene like a lightning bolt, racking up points, assists, and jaw-dropping highlights at a historic pace. When they finally met on the court during the NCAA tournament, it wasn't just a game, it was a cultural moment. Clark's Iowa squad dismantled UConn in one of the most talked-about showdowns in recent memory. Her 41-point performance against the Huskies became instant legend, a masterclass in dominance that sent shockwaves through the sport. It marked the second time Clark had bested Bueckers in college, solidifying her edge in their head-to-head matchups and adding fuel to the growing debate. Who truly reigned supreme? Fans and media began to take sides. The rivalry had now transcended the court. It was a battle of styles, of philosophies, and of identities. Bueckers represented the established system, polished, proven, and classic. Clark was the disruptor, electric, fearless, and entirely her own force. And in this division, a new era of women's basketball was born. As Caitlin Clark's star rose, so did the voices of skepticism. Her jaw-dropping highlights and scoring explosions captivated fans. But behind the admiration lurked serious doubts from some of the sport's most respected figures. Chief among them was Gino Auriemma, the very architect of Paige Bueckers' collegiate success. Auriemma didn't hold back. He questioned Clark's shot selection, her defensive consistency, and whether her play style, so reliant on volume scoring and deep threes, could survive the structured, physical world of professional basketball. And he wasn't alone. Hall of Famer Diana Taurasi added fuel to the fire with a now famous warning. "This kid's in for a rude awakening." Headlines ran wild with the quote, framing it as a personal shot at Clark. But Taurasi's full message was more nuanced, less about attacking Clark, and more about preparing her for the harsh reality of the WNBA. Still, the message was clear. not everyone was convinced. While Clark's fanbase grew with every viral clip, a growing chorus of analysts and coaches saw her as a potential flash in the pan, brilliant, yes, but not built for the grind of the pros. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers became the benchmark for what those critics believed WNBA ready should look like. Polished, disciplined, efficient. The contrast between them became symbolic. Clark represented risk and rebellion against traditional basketball wisdom. Bueckers embodied refinement and textbook fundamentals. And this divide wasn't just about skill. It became a larger conversation about how the women's game should evolve. Could raw firepower and instinct redefine success? Or would the old guard standards still dictate who belonged at the top? As draft day approached, the tension between those two ideologies only intensified. Clark's defenders pointed to her historic numbers, leadership, and unmatched impact on viewership and attendance. Her critics held fast, warning that the same chaos that made her great in college could make her expendable in the pros. The stage was set not just for a player's transition, but for a battle over what greatness truly means in women's basketball. When Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers finally declared for the WNBA, the basketball world held its breath. The moment fans had been waiting for was now official. Two of the most electric, debated, and followed college athletes of their generation were turning pro. Clark was selected by the Indiana Fever amid unprecedented media hype. Her college resume was unmatched, record-breaking stats, viral moments, and a fan base that turned every game into an event. But expectations come with pressure, and Clark's rookie campaign did not begin as smoothly as some had hoped. She entered a Fever system that appeared hesitant to embrace her full potential. Coach Stephanie White favored a more traditional, controlled tempo, one that clashed with Clark's fast-paced instincts. The result? An awkward fit that left fans frustrated and Clark's game restrained. She faced injuries early, disrupting her rhythm and chemistry with teammates. Rotations changed constantly. Roles weren't clearly defined. And while the flashes of brilliance were still there, the consistency wasn't. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers joined the Dallas Wings under far less spotlight. Without the media frenzy surrounding Clark, Bueckers was allowed to ease into her new role with far less scrutiny. Her numbers weren't explosive, but she was solid, smart decisions, efficient minutes, and a clear place in the team structure. This contrast was impossible to ignore. The rivalry had evolved. No longer college stars under the microscope of March Madness, they were now professionals, adults in the most competitive women's league on earth. And while Bueckers quietly found her place, Clark was being dissected nightly on sports panels, social media feeds, and highlight reels. Every missed shot, every turnover, every coaching decision, everything became a headline. But behind the noise, something deeper was brewing. The game that would finally pit them against each other as pros was approaching. And for Clark, it wasn't just another matchup. It was a chance to reclaim her narrative, silence the critics, and remind everyone exactly why she changed the game in the first place. While headlines focused on Caitlin Clark's box scores and media moments, the real story was unfolding behind closed doors in Indiana. What looked like a promising rookie campaign on paper was unraveling due to mounting internal tension within the Fever organization. At the center of the storm was a philosophical clash, one that quietly boiled for weeks before erupting into full public view. Caitlin Clark, known for her high-octane, fast-paced defensive style, found herself boxed into a system that seemed allergic to tempo. Head coach Stephanie White preferred a slower, methodical approach centered around half-court execution and rigid play calling. For a player like Clark, whose vision thrives in transition and whose brilliance explodes in chaos, it was like driving a race car in rush hour traffic. The difference in ideologies wasn't just theoretical. It turned volatile during a nationally televised game against the Atlanta Dream. Cameras caught Clark and White in a heated sideline exchange that left no room for interpretation. Voices were raised, body language stiffened, and the tension between star and coach was laid bare for the world to see. That moment confirmed what many insiders had been whispering for weeks. There was a disconnect, and it was getting worse. The chemistry on the floor reflected the instability of it. Lineups shifted constantly. Clark was returning from injury, still finding her rhythm. Dears Dantas had just rejoined the squad after national team duties, creating further disruption. The rotations had no flow. If there was ever a stretch that tested Caitlin Clark's resolve, it was the one leading up to her showdown with Paige Bueckers. The Indiana Fever weren't just losing games, they were spiraling. Games that should have been routine wins against bottom-tier teams like the LA Sparks and the Golden State Valkyries turned into head-scratching defeats. The Fever looked flat, out of sync, and painfully slow, an especially cruel irony for a team built around one of the fastest minds in basketball. The offense stalled. Open looks clanked off the rim. Turnovers erased momentum before it could build. Fast breaks, Clark's signature weapon, became a rarity. Fans began to question whether the Fever were using Clark correctly. Analysts debated whether her struggles were a product of flawed coaching or if Diana Taurasi's warning was coming true. But behind the slump, Clark never wavered. In interviews, she acknowledged the frustration, but maintained faith in her preparation. She pointed to Steph Curry, how even the greatest shooters endure slumps. "I'm never going to stop shooting," she said. Her words weren't just defiant, they were prophetic. Still, the warning signs were everywhere. The team's inconsistency wasn't just on the scoreboard. It was cultural. One night, they'd look like contenders. The next, they'd fall apart. "We play a good game, then a bad one, then a good one again," Clark admitted. "We have to learn how to stack them." But that consistency was impossible without alignment between player and coach. And that's where the core issue remained. Coach Stephanie White continued to resist the style Clark needed to thrive, an up-tempo game fueled by transition offense and constant movement. The philosophical rift had created a team with no identity. Even when they won, like the narrow victory against the Atlanta Dream, it felt like a band-aid over a deeper wound. The team needed a breakthrough. Clark needed a moment. And the stage was perfectly set. A nationally televised matchup against her longtime rival, Paige Bueckers. The media billed it as a clash of the titans. But for Clark, it wasn't just about headlines or history. This was personal. This was about proving that her style could not only survive in the WNBA, but dominate it. And as the Fever prepared to host the Dallas Wings, everything was on the line. Her critics were circling. Her team was stumbling. But Clark was about to remind the world that sometimes the best way to silence doubt is to unleash the truth. July 2025. The night had finally arrived. The Indiana Fever were set to host the Dallas Wings in what would become one of the most watched and most dissected games of the WNBA season. But this wasn't just a contest between two playoff-hunting teams. This was something deeper. This was Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bueckers, round 4. For years, fans had debated, compared, and celebrated their differences. And now, under the bright lights of a nationally televised ABC broadcast, the two phenoms would meet as professionals for the very first time. The anticipation was electric. Tickets had sold out weeks in advance. Social media buzzed with highlight reels and hot takes. Viewers from across the country tuned in, eager to see whether Clark would continue her dominance over Bueckers, or if the former UConn star would finally turn the tide. But the stakes went far beyond personal rivalry. For Caitlin Clark, this was a chance to take control of a narrative that had slowly slipped away during a rocky start to her rookie year. Every critic who questioned her shot selection, every analyst who doubted her leadership, every headline that called her overrated. This game offered a singular opportunity to answer all of it. What no one could predict, however, was that Coach Stephanie White, after weeks of resistance, would finally hand over the reins. For the first time all season, Clark was given full control of the offense. No more shackles. No more half-court delays. White's system took a back seat to Clark's vision. And from the opening tip-off, it was clear something had shifted. Clark initiated the offense. She called her own pace. She orchestrated every possession like a conductor commanding a symphony. But the Wings weren't just bystanders. Led by Bueckers and veteran stars like Eric Ogunbowale, Dallas came prepared with a physical game plan, picking up Clark full court, switching screens aggressively, and trying to trap her out of rhythm. Yet instead of folding, Clark thrived. She didn't force shots. She read the defense. She found her teammates in perfect rhythm. Early buckets came slow, but the Fever looked composed. The first quarter ended with both teams feeling each other out, exchanging small runs, and searching for momentum. But underneath the surface, a storm was building. Clark's confidence was visible. Her energy was contagious. And as the second quarter approached, she was ready to detonate. The country had tuned in for a rivalry. What they were about to witness was a statement. And the game, as fans would soon discover, was just getting started. What began as a cautious chess match erupted into a masterclass of momentum in the second quarter, when Caitlin Clark, fully unleashed, took control in a way that rewrote not just the flow of the game, but the narrative surrounding her entire rookie campaign. Up until this moment, fans had seen glimpses of what Clark was capable of. The deep threes, the full court assists, the swagger. But against Dallas, with Coach Stephanie White finally loosening the reins, Clark didn't just play fast. She played free. And the result? One of the most explosive quarters in Indiana Fever history. Clark orchestrated a breathtaking offensive surge, pushing tempo with surgical precision. Her signature touchdown passes, full court lasers that turned rebounds into instant points, became the new heartbeat of the Fever. The ball barely touched the floor before it hit a teammate in stride. This wasn't just basketball. This was jazz. This was poetry in motion. In just 10 minutes, Indiana exploded for 36 points, outscoring Dallas by a staggering 21 points. The Wings were overwhelmed, scrambling to close out late on every rotation, caught flat-footed by the relentless tempo. Clark was everywhere. 1 second she was draining a step-back three from the wing. The next she was drawing defenders and threading no-look passes to Aaliyah Boston or Natasha Howard for easy finishes. Her connection with teammates was telepathic. On one possession, she drew a double team at the arc, only to flick a perfectly timed bounce pass to Mitchell slicing through the lane. On another, she chased down a defensive board, looked up, and without hesitation, launched a court-length pass that landed in Sophie Cunningham's hands for a fast-break layup. The Fever were no longer playing within a system. They were playing within a vision, Clark's vision. And it was working. The team shot an absurd 76.2% from the field in the second quarter alone. They went on a 33-9 run that lasted nearly 8 minutes, breaking down Dallas possession by possession with relentless movement and creativity. But it wasn't just offense. Clark brought fire on defense too, diving into passing lanes, disrupting rhythm, and even recording a stunning block that led to another fast break opportunity. Every possession felt urgent. Every play had purpose. And as the scoreboard climbed and the crowd roared louder with each sequence, something became undeniable. This wasn't just a hot stretch. It was a moment of transformation. The Indiana Fever, a team previously mired in inconsistency, had found their identity. And it was being channeled through a 22-year-old rookie who'd just been given the keys to her own kingdom. The second quarter had ended. The rout was underway, and the record books were already being rewritten. By the time the final buzzer sounded, it wasn't just the scoreboard that made headlines. It was the numbers Caitlin Clark posted in the process. Numbers that weren't just impressive. They were historic. The Indiana Fever finished the game with a thunderous 102-83 victory over the Dallas Wings, but buried within that scoreline was something even more powerful. A statistical performance that etched Clark's name deeper into WNBA lore. First, the team stat that turned heads. 64 points in the first half. That shattered the Fever's franchise record, previously set at 63 points back in 2016 against the New York Liberty. More than that, it was the single highest scoring half by any team in the WNBA this entire season. It was a bold, undeniable statement. The Fever were no longer just trying to compete. They were dictating the pace. And Caitlin Clark was the engine behind it. Her fingerprints were on every possession. She recorded 13 assists, tying a franchise record and reinforcing her reputation not just as a scorer, but as a facilitator capable of elevating everyone around her. Her timing was flawless. Her passing vision was second to none. But what made this performance truly unprecedented was the completeness of it. Clark didn't just drop dimes and knock down threes. She hustled on defense, attacked the boards, and played like every second mattered. She ended the game with 14 points, 13 assists, and 5 steals, a stat